What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. We're talking fast today because we've got a lot to cover. We're going to go position by position and talk about one day three prospect, or I should say projected day three prospect that the Green Bay Packers may have a moderate to high level of interest in because a lot of these players just happen to meet a lot of what they're looking for. Every single player is predominantly a Packers type. Every player, for one reason or another, is also probably not being talked about as much as they should be. Yet they also have a reason why they're very much considered a day three project. So I'm going to give some stats, some traits, and then also their razz and talk about why they may be a fit for the Green Bay Packers and why they just may be what we're looking for. So, but first, before I get to that, I do want to cover one thing. And this came up over the weekend. And I know there was even a comment about it on the last video that I did. It's been talked about a ton on Twitter. And that is Rob Demovsky appearing on Jason Wilde's show with Mark Tauscher, Wilde and Tausch, talking about the Packers wanting to, or perhaps switching Zach Tom to the center position, thus pushing Josh Myers to the bench, opening up the door for the Packers to maybe pick a tackle in round one. And of course, the speculation has been rampant ever since this clip came out. And there's been a lot of talk about, well, I mean, now get Mims, Guyton, the top 30 visits that they've done suddenly make a lot of sense. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to play that clip for you. Not going to play nearly the full thing, just a small clip so you can hear exactly what's said. And then I'm going to give my reaction to it and why maybe this is being blown up just a little bit more than what it should be at this time.
Think if you had a guess right now at this time, is Josh Myers on this team after when we were looking at, what is it, April 13th today? Is he on this team next year?
No. In fact, I think the starting center is on this team right now, but it's not Josh Myers, the long-term starting center.
Who's it going to be?
I was told by a couple people that within the organization, they think Zach Tom is a really good, is a Pro Bowl right tackle, an All-Pro guard, and a potential Hall of Fame center.
Ooh.
So there's your center.
Ooh.
Okay, now they go on to talk about this a bit more, but like that's the main meat of it, is Rob Demovsky saying that the Packers believe they've got a Pro Bowl tackle, an all-pro guard, and then a potentially Hall of Fame center in Zach Tom. And if you've got someone who you think might be a Hall of Famer at one position, why would you not play them at that position? And here, there's just a few thoughts that I've got here, okay? One, he starts out the clip by saying, Tausch asks him, do you think Josh Myers is on this roster? And Demovsky says, no. Now, my guess, really, because I think Demovsky was saying, like, do you think he's going to be the starting center, whatever? Because I'm not seeing really, like, unless the Packers really load up on the interior offensive line, that they would go from praising Josh Myers all season long, showing no interest in perhaps moving him out of the starting center spot to just outright cutting him this offseason. He is entering the last year of his contract. They'd save about $3 million in cap space if they did actually decide to move on to him. But I'm very hard-pressed to believe that he's just going to straight up get cut. Okay, so now let's say that they do want to move Myers to the backup of the offensive line and kick Tom into center. Look, I don't doubt that Zach Tom's best position is center. I think a lot of people have talked about that. Brian Goodkins, right after he drafted Zach Tom, talked about how his best position probably is center. Like, this isn't a secret, and he probably would be great there. And whether center or right tackle is a more important position on the field seems to truly vary depending on who you talk to, because this has been a much talked about topic in the last couple of days. I'm of the opinion of, hey, you've got a 5th round draft pick who you started at right tackle, who proved to be one of the top 5 right tackles in football this year. Leave him alone. Like, yeah, you've got Myers at center and you got your problems there. But again, I would rather you pursue that in the mid rounds of the draft than, do it any other way. So, like, that's that. But still, what I really want to get to here is later on in that clip, Rob Demovsky did reveal that he was told that late night at the combine. Okay, so let's just a few things to break down here. One, if you've ever heard a lot of different people talk about the combine, you know that a lot of those late night conversations at the combine happen to take place over several ounces of alcohol. Okay. Demovsky also did not say that this was a high-ranking personnel executive. I don't think he was slinging beers back with Brian Gutekunst, and Gut was like revealing personnel plans, or even, since we know LaFleur wasn't at the combine, wasn't Steno or LaFleur either. So I'm saying take all of this with a massive grain of salt. Also, he got told this at the combine, which was like 6 weeks ago, and is just choosing to say something for the very first time now. If this was a quote saying, by the way, Rob, what we're going to do is we're going to take Tom and make him the starting center and then draft a tackle. Of course, they'd never be that overt about it. But if it were true news in that regard, I think we would have gotten hints earlier. I think what this was probably an exaggerated statement. I mean, maybe not even exaggerated. Maybe they do believe they got a Hall of Fame center. But what I think this really was a conversation, not intention. It was a statement of belief, not of action. And so a lot of this, and maybe they do draft a tackle in round 1. Maybe their long-term vision is Zach Tom at center, and then this first-round draft pick becoming a starter at one of the tackle spots. Maybe that is the long-term plan. But in terms of this exact quote, I would take it with a very, very hefty grain of salt. So now on to the positions. Again, this is one guy for each position that I think is a day 3 prospect that the Packers may find themselves looking at when it comes to the draft. There's goods, there's bads, and there's their profiles. So let's start off with running back. And first, we're going to take a look at Rasheen Ali. Over his 2 healthy seasons at Marshall, Ali has amassed 40 total touchdowns and over 2,500 yards rushing. Why only 2 healthy seasons? Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But for the 23-year-old Ali, football was not at one time the biggest priority in his life. According to Dane Brugler of The Athletic, Ali spent much of his youth focusing on boxing, and most definitely not school. When it did come time for college, Ali was unable to go many different places because he didn't have good enough grades. But eventually Marshall stepped in, made him a Prop 48 signee, meaning that he could take classes at Marshall, but he needed to clear significant academic hurdles in order to actually join the football team. And he did. In fact, he did so well that he made the dean's list at Marshall. So what's the good? He's a strong one-cut runner who does a good job following his blockers to daylight. He's an elite athlete who is numbered 96 on Bruce Feldman's freak list, in part due to being able to power clean 335 pounds and squat 500. He adjusts his speed well and is a weapon in the open field, as exemplified by taking one of only his 5 punt returns in college. 20% of them. He took it 97 yards for a touchdown. But the bad. The man's been hurt. He had a massive leg injury in 2022 that took his entire season. And then to conclude this last season, he ruptured his bicep that didn't allow him to do any of the athletic testing and results in the incomplete RAS card that you see there. Also, he does have excellent burst, but there's seemingly some questions about what his true top-end speed is. And he may not always have the speed to outrun NFL defenders. Not that they're the same player at all. So don't think that I'm saying that this is a direct comp. But isn't there something familiar for Green Bay about a really good one-cut runner with soft hands who could be a dynamo in a return game, who finds creases well, but doesn't always have the top-end speed to run away from everyone? It does kind of sound like Aaron Jones a little bit, doesn't it? On to the next position. By the way, I didn't cover this position, but in case you didn't notice, I'm not doing quarterback on this list. Okay, moving on to wide receiver. Cornelius Johnson from the University of Michigan, coming in at 191 on the consensus big board. And I didn't say this earlier, but I really should. I took the consensus big board from the mock draft database that you can find online. Basically, anyone after 136, round 5, is eligible for this list. So 191, Cornelius Johnson. He was highly recruited out of high school. He just never quite reached the peak that many expected him to, arriving and basically pitting him as a day 3 selection. Good? Oh, yeah. Look at that RAS. It looks mighty nice and very, frankly, Packers-y. Coming from Michigan, he was revered as a tenacious and willing run blocker as their ex-receiver. Pair that with the athletic traits, and you can see why this may be a fit for Matt LaFleur's offense. He is also known for immense body control, and he's got a very large catch radius that he really did use to his advantage to create highlight reel plays while at Michigan. Also, he does not have a world of special team snaps in his arsenal, but he did boast 2 punt blocks in 2021. The bad. Despite his size, he didn't exactly find the end zone much. In fact, in 2023, he had more drops than he had touchdowns. That's like uber red flag for wide receivers. And he turns 24 in this upcoming rookie season. So he's a bit old for the Green Bay youth movement. And you're going to see that that's kind of a theme with a lot of these different prospects. And the last thing, why didn't he break out? Granted, Michigan doesn't throw the ball the most in college, but still, was it because of route running that needs refinement? Just not able to separate? Or a combo of it all? If the Packers can find that out and coach it up, they may have a very nice day 3 prospect to work with. Or maybe just someone who sticks around as a run blocker and special teamer. Moving on to the tight end position, we're taking a look at Tip Ryman. As noted just about everywhere you could possibly find when you're reading any profile about Ryman, he's the number 183 selection on the big board, and he went from a walk-on to being a captain at the University of Illinois. Now coming in at 271 pounds. Ryman has worked his tail off to gain over 50 pounds during his collegiate career. I don't know. I did that during college, and no one was that impressed when I did it. The good, though, one of the best blocking tight ends in this class, and I don't think many people really question that. And it really doesn't matter where he's put either, be it in line or even moved out a little bit. He's one of the best blockers in this class. And while he doesn't get the ball thrown to him a ton, over 70% of his receptions either went for first downs or touchdowns this last season. He's also believed to be incredibly high character. He's described as an old soul who will give anything just to be better at his role on the team. He's even got quotes out there about how, well, yeah, of course I'd love the ball more, but I'm just going to do what I got to do so that the team can win. Yeah, that sounds like a Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave type addition in the room. The bad, though, and I did look at this tight end position through the lens of they need an H-back or a fullback or a move tight end, whatever nomenclature you want to assign to it. And only some scouts consider Ryman to really be a candidate for that. Others like him in the Mercedes Lewis type role of just put him on the edge and basically give yourself the beginnings of a 6th offensive lineman who will occasionally make a catch. And the reason why some are having difficulty seeing him as an H-back candidate really comes down to a lack of agility, a lack of athletic traits, because, yeah, look at the Raz. It's beautiful. But some of those speed scores didn't exactly always show up on film. And that's where the concern is, could he be effective coming out of the backfield? If he can, they may have a dangerous blocking weapon coming out. Moving on to offensive tackle, we're looking at Garrett Greenfield out of South Dakota State, number 246 on the big board. Greenfield has not missed a game in 3 seasons, starting at both tackle spots, although mostly left tackle, for South Dakota State. The good. He's got big reach, 34-inch arms, and an 84-inch wingspan, and still only weighing 313 pounds. A lot of times when you see like that kind of wingspan, it's on a guy who might be like 350. No, his frame, still 313. He's a 2-time captain who's renowned for his ability to work well in combo blocks and in tandem. He's got good lateral quickness and is nimble enough to advance down the field and clear lanes for runners who do indeed find a crease or on screen plays. The bad, and this is a direct quote from Brugler, not a true people mover in the run game and ends up waist bending to create added push. He also is another older prospect. He's going to be turning 25 during the season. And keep in mind, too, with these COVID exemptions, that's kind of a trend in this year's draft, especially. You're seeing, we're going to talk about some shortly, like 6th-year NFL or collegiate players now entering the NFL draft. That's pushing the ages a little higher, and Green Bay may have to address that. And frankly, for a team that needs an experienced swing tackle, Greenfield, who's got experience at both sides, is a little bit older. He may fit the bill. For the interior offensive line, we're taking a look at Jalen Sundall. Again, as I just mentioned, there are some that are 6-year COVID exemption players. Here's one. He spent the following as his collegiate career before becoming the number 298 player on the big board. Year 1, redshirt. Year 2, backup left tackle. Year 3, starting center. Year 4, starting center. Year 5, starting center. Year 6, starting left tackle. Most consider this last season, after filling in for Cody Bunch, who entered the draft last year, he considered it to be his last season his best. But they still ultimately project a move inside in the NFL, specifically, as his Raz card notes there, to the center position. But he also does have the requisite size, the arm length being over 33 inches, that he could play tackle in a pinch. He's highly athletic. He can pull. He can get a hold of his man. The versatility is perhaps his greatest strength, along with his agility. Bad. Both NFL Draft Buzz and NFL.com note that Sundell needs to get stronger to consistently win against NFL linemen. Other notes include that he needs to set a heavier anchor in order to not get moved. Basically, the only knocks are dude needs more strength, and he's old. He's one of the older prospects in the entire draft, already at 24 and a half years of age. But hey, like I said, they're day 3 for a reason. Moving on now to the defensive side of the ball. This is actually one player that I don't have a Raz card for, but I'm talking Cedric Johnson, the edge from Ole Miss. 21 years old, 164 on the big board, 260 pounds at the edge position. That's just how the Packers like their mid to late round edge selections historically. And as I mentioned, he's coming from Ole Miss. He finished his 4-year collegiate career with 19 sacks, and in 2023 alone, he logged 19 stops. The good, his body. He's number 41 on Bruce Feldman's freak list, as he boasts only 11.3% body fat. Also, in a dead sprint, he's topped 20 miles an hour before. Other goods, he can win with speed, he can win with power, and even the occasional pass rush move, including a spin. The bad, though, he doesn't necessarily know when to use which one, because he has aggressive hands, doesn't know when to use them. It's why, in spite of that incredible athleticism, he didn't garner more production, only 5.5 sacks in this last season in school. He needs to learn how to play in his hand with the dirt. He needs to learn more so how to play this position with more refinement. He needs to learn how to do a pass rush sequence. But the athleticism is there. The size is there. And if the Packers are looking for a mid-round selection that they can coach up, kind of a mid to late round version of like a Rashawn Gary, all the athletic tools are there. The motor is even there a lot of the time. But what's not there is knowing what to do. If they could coach that up, they could find themselves an awfully nice player. Moving to the defensive line, we're talking Jaden Crumedy, another 6th-year collegiate player, this time from Mississippi State. Crumedy has spent his time being very productive in college. He's already boasting 2 degrees and a wife. The good, he's started 47 collegiate games and in turn has started in multiple schemes. He's considered a player in the NFL who can play 3-4, 4-3, doesn't matter. He can play. From Boogler, an exact quote here. Overall, Crumedy's tape is more sporadic than consistent. But if you grade the flashes, not many 300-pounders have his athletic movements and power potential, which will keep him around if his fire stays lit. There you have some of the goods and the bads. To round out a true estimation of the bad, though, he wasn't the most productive on the field over his 6 seasons, amassing only 8.5 career sacks and 119 tackles. As noted above, the pick would be based on athleticism and flashes that you hope to get to being a consistent level in the NFL. But the consistency just wasn't there in college. He's another player who, in order to be more effective, especially as a pass rusher, he needs to develop his sequence and his timing. Moving now to off-ball linebacker, we're talking Jordan McGee, actually one of my favorite day 3 players in the draft. He comes in at 242 on the consensus big board. He was an ACC all-academic honoree. He was a 2-time team captain, and he was considered to be the emotional leader of the defense. The good, the man is quick. He's got the speed to cover the seam and get after the quarterback, finishing as PFF's 4th highest-rated pass-rushing off-ball linebacker this last year. He also played quite a bit of teams with 307 career special team snaps. And in college, he filled the Mike role in his college's 4-2-5 nickel-based scheme. The bad, he's coming in right around 230 pounds. I know it says 228 there. There's been other times where he's been measured at 232. So like give or take a couple cheese curds, he's right around 230. And many say that the lighter weight is very evident in his play. His missed tackle rate was only 14%, but it's the way that some of those tackle attempts were overpowered that's the concern. And when he does anticipate, he does so decisively and effectively. But the key word there is when he anticipates, because sometimes you could see that being late was a trend in his game. For the next player, I'm breaking the rules just a little bit. We're talking Elijah Jones from Boston College. He comes a little bit higher than 136 on the big board. He's at 128. So projected as a bottom 4th round pick. I just thought Jones needs to be acknowledged more because he's coming from Jeff Hafley's Boston College team. He brings immediate experience into this new defensive plan. So let's go over the good. He's considered one of the better press defenders in the entire draft. He's got long arms that he keeps receivers within his grips, and he's more than willing to fight the receivers for the ball. Dude is feisty. While his technique isn't always perfect, he did boast only a 9.4% missed tackle rate after dedicating to working on it this last season. Prior year in college, he also had a rate of about 6%. So it's kind of a year-by-year thing, but this last year, 9.4%. So that does put him on par with tackling as well as many of the safeties in this class. And he's not only experienced on defense, he was a gunner for basically all of Boston College's special teams. But the bad. 2 things here. He's 24 years old. Yeah, that's a bit of a knock, especially for a corner. And the other, 185 pounds. Older than the Packers might want for they'd have to get him, and generally smaller than how they draft their corners. Plus, the other thing that a lot of different profiles noted about him is he is uber aggressive. And there's questions about whether that aggressive style would actually translate into the NFL or whether he'd be too handsy and would just wind up getting flagged a lot, especially if he falls behind. He did not give up too many catches in this last year in college, but about half of them did go for big plays. Now, keep in mind, we're talking on a small scale of like 13 catches, so still not many. Moving to the safety position, we're talking Dominique Hampton out of Washington. Number 193 on the big board, but overall number 9 on Brugler's list of safeties. Hampton spent half of his 6 collegiate years as a cornerback, including both nickel and outside, before moving to safety, where he amassed 109 tackles this last season. The good, he's got an NFL safety body, that's for sure. He's over 6 feet, over 210 pounds, and the man can level a hit like it. He's an impressive closer as receivers get near him. And again, he's not afraid to use those long arms, just like Jones, in order to frustrate whoever he may end up covering. The bad, similar to Jones, the aggression and frustration reaped may translate to penalties in the NFL. Somehow as well, in spite of being on the field so much and near the ball so much that he got 109 tackles, he was only involved in 3 turnover plays during his entire career, 2 of which were just this last year. They were both interceptions. He also had 9 pass deflections this last year as well. He has the capacity right now, it's believed, to be an immediate fireball on special teams. But if he can get more disciplined on defense, then he can round into shape as a depth safety there as well. So there you have it, some day 3 prospects. I wanted to give just a little taste, some quick hits into a number of day 3 prospects that may find themselves as matches for the Green Bay Packers. Again, everyone coming from rounds projected to be rounds 5, 6, 7. Whether that comes into fruition or not, we don't know, but we will find out shortly. Keep in mind, when it does come to the NFL draft, Claudia and I will be here for every single pick, every single minute, all 3 days. I do hope that you find some time to join us so we can talk Packers and the NFL draft. Thanks so much for joining me here on Lombardi Time Brews. I do hope you had a fantastic weekend. And as always, go Pack Go.